Hey, Rebel Bankers, this is your host, Chris Noggle, and welcome back to the Real Estate Money School. I have two amazing guests from the company Leafy Legal Services. Don't ever start your company or your business without talking to them first. So I've got Price and Jennifer Gligoric. I was trying to nail that one, but we got it.
You did a good
and
job.
They're going to talk to you a lot about legal structure, proper structure of your business, but not just that, proper structure of your business and it's how it applies to money. But before we get into their story, I always like to start with talking about your journey to becoming a Rebel Banker and the different things you're doing in your business and in your life to gain success. And you know what the best part is? It's a new year, folks. It's 2020 and it's time to get your ass in gear and start making things happen. Probably not supposed to swear, but who cares? It's my show. So you guys got to get started. You got to take that leap and make things happen. If you're already started, well, kick it up a gear. Whatever it is, read a book, pick up a bunch of books, and just set yourself some goals. I'm going to finish the Private Money Guide by next week. Then I'm going to pick up Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, and I'm going to finish that in the next week. Set attainable goals, and you are well on your way to becoming a Rebel Banker. So let's just jump right into this. So Brian and Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So tell the audience a little bit about your business and what it looks like today and just some of the high level stuff that you guys do to help your clients and your members.
Well, we do asset protection strategies primarily for real estate investors and entrepreneurs. We set up the entity the right way so you can start doing your business even if you don't have a house yet. You have it set the right way, and we make sure that we set you up for success, and so that you are not going to be a target for a lawsuit, or that even if you are sued, because no one can prevent that, you're not going to lose everything and go back to zero. And we tie that into one of the most powerful estate plans for real estate investors you can find, if not the most powerful, as well as retirement accounts that let your money work for you as an investor. And we do this along with a lot of other legal things that real estate investors need, from asset stripping to dissolution of LLCs. You name it, we can do it when it applies to investing.
I like the sound of that. Brian, what do you have to add to this?
Oh man, she pretty much covered everything.
I know, she knocked you right out. I had to give you some, had to bring you into the picture here.
That's why she's a partner. She does everything. She's awesome. So, but yeah, really what we focus on with, especially with real estate investors, is the series LLC structuring. And so essentially it gives you a way of putting your assets in separate LLCs and getting them away from your own personal name, so that if you do happen to get sued, they aren't seeing all your assets in one spot. And it keeps it from, a lot of times when people want to sue you, say you get in a car accident or something like that, some lawyer that you see on a billboard can just look up a lot of times, if you're not protected, you can see all your assets that they own. It's like, hey, this guy's got, 10 houses. This is a good person to do it, versus if you structure with us, they would see none of your assets, and they would have to go into each one and find what was in there. So it's really great structuring, especially for real estate investors and entrepreneurs that have multiple businesses.
Yeah.
And I've heard a ton about the Series LLC. I mean, we don't really use them here in New York because New York's just a crappy state. That's all I'm going to say. New York is a crappy state, and they don't like us to be protected because the attorneys control everything we do. Anyway, we'll get on to from that part of it. But yeah, we'll go into that a little bit more. But before we do that, one of the coolest thing about both of you is your story. I mean, let's take the audience back a little bit and talk about like your journey, your story, 2008, and all those things that go into it, and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah. So in 2008, I had a couple houses. One was personal, one was a rental, and all of a sudden, I live in Southern California, so they weren't cheap. And at the time though, you could do 100% financing. And, it didn't matter, how much it was. Everybody thought the houses were going to continue to go up. They'd be overappraised, and it's very easy to get into a house. And no one thought the market would ever change. And as many of you know, is in 2008, that all changed. And the bottom completely fell out of Southern California and many other places around the U.S. And found ourselves basically with, all our houses were underwater. And at the time, basically I didn't really have many choices. I took some bad advice from a friend, which unfortunately he didn't really know what he was talking about. So always get good advice. And so with that bad advice, it got me worse in a worse predicament. And then basically I had to end up going bankrupt and losing everything and starting over from scratch. And so, it was at the time too, my wife was pregnant with our twins, and she was in bedridden, so she can work either. And so it was like we're in a pretty interesting situation as everything kind of came to a head. But even though that happened, it's not like it was the end of the world either. I mean, everybody anticipates the worst, but when the worst happens, it actually isn't so bad. And so, I've been since then, Jennifer and I ended up meeting at a different company and working together and building that business up to, multi-million-dollar business, and eventually starting Leafy Legal Services. And then now we're here. And so, we completely turned things around. I'm in a better financial situation than I was back then. And so even though it was a bad situation, I lost everything, I was able to fully recover and more.
That's good. And Jennifer, you have a unique story as well. Let's hear a little bit about kind of your journey, because we kind of interjected you in there where you both started working, but let's talk about how you got where you're at.
Well, I started out in a pretty good, decent family. If you looked at my family now, you'd think I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth. However, the time I was around a teenager, everybody went through a major crisis, and I ended up homeless by myself. So I traveled around, mostly staying in Covenant House shelters, because you have to be a kid to be in Covenant House. They're the safest. And just trying to make my way, which I was very book smart as a straight A student, but I was very not street smart whatsoever. Ended up going to University of Miami. Still have no idea how I managed to do that. I worked. I was homeless. You can only stay at the homeless shelter for certain lengths of time, and then you get kicked out. So most of the time I was living in bushes or a tent, a car, until that car got stolen. I've had everything that I own except for the clothes on my back stolen from me twice in my life. And it's amazing you survive it. I also saw families during that time who were like me, had once had a place to stay. Sometimes it was even 2 weeks prior, and something happened and they ended up on the street. And it was very scary, but it also had paved the way for a lot of things. Some of them very good, some mindsets amazing, in that I don't judge. Until I hear who the person is. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter really anything. I try to look at people as people, right? And some things are bad, very limiting mindsets when it comes to money, especially money. I'm still learning an amazing amount every single day. One of the best things that did happen to me is my mother, before things went all south, she owned the largest staffing company of her kind south of Houston. So I grew up working with her and knowing the pride of work and the pride that gives people in hard work. So I would set women up at a typewriter, an IBM Selectric, this was a very long time ago, and set their little timer and watch these women stick a cigarette in their mouth, light it, because you could smoke back then, and sit there and type 80 words per minute. And that's when you had no autocorrect, and they would have to manually set their margins by moving the little metal slides ahead of time.
I remember those.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I would sit there and watch them, and I would just wait for that ash to fall on the keyboard, and it never did. They were like amazing women. It was incredible. But she also did Boilermakers. She worked in a male-dominated industry. In fact, she kept that business for 54 years. That was the one thing she did really great. Even when she was really, really sick and not a parent, not parenting, she still was an incredible businesswoman. So I had a base that kept me away from prostitution or drugs because I knew how to work. I knew how to fill out an application. I knew basic things that I guess other kids don't get to learn. And that really saved my ass. It also taught me a good work ethic to dig myself out from my nails, and it gave me some skills. Sales, meeting with people, and being able to do administrative tasks. I worked my way up. I was a crisis intervention person for businesses. I started out in HR, then became a recruiter. Recruiting is a lot like sales, became a really great salesperson, went into marketing, and just started learning all these skills until eventually I built a business helping small businesses grow. And every time they would hire me, they would say, it's our sales, it's our widgets, it's our brochures. We need a new script. We need a new outside sales process. And every single time it was their HR. They were hiring the wrong people, putting them in the wrong spot, paying them in the wrong amount, hiring family. It was the way they managed their people. It was all human resources. And that's how I met Brian for an HR job. He hired me and we scaled up from like 3 people, I think, when he started, including himself. Then I came in, we didn't have very many, and we scaled up to like 221 people in 21 countries in 18 months. And from then on, we've stuck together. I've moved to a project, tried to bring him over. He's moved to a project, tried to bring me over. And now we have a team. And about 3 years.
That's what that deserves.
Yeah. And so now we game into asset protection because we're real estate investors and we're entrepreneurs. And we understand what it takes to start a real estate investing business. And we also have seen so many fail because of silly things. It's usually not that they're not a great contractor or not smart with the numbers or understanding that, this multifamily unit, if I could just charge $30 for valet trash service, if we could add that amenity, we would have total occupancy. It's usually something they get hit later on, and it's something they skipped in the beginning. So what we do is we fix it to where those things are taken care of. You have security. You're not waking up in the middle of the night going, what if I get sued? You don't have to worry about that. You just have to worry about your next big deal. So that's what we do.
And I think a lot of the people that get into real estate, they're like, oh, I'll never get sued. Well, that is the biggest line of crap I've ever heard, because if you're going to get into real estate and you're going to take this as serious as we do, and you're going to scale a business, it's not a matter of if you're going to get sued. It's a matter of how many times you're going to get sued. That's a fact. I think we've been sued like 4 or 5 times. And it's funny because I used to freak out. We got that first letter, it gets dropped off at your door, and you're like, oh my God, honey, we're getting sued. That house that we sold, they renovated the bathroom and they think that we did the bad work that was there, when really it was just the prior owner that we didn't touch. But anyway, and then they sue you and you got to go through the process. But that's where this whole thing comes in, because if we weren't properly structured legally, we would have had much bigger things to worry about. Like, all of a sudden your personal assets come in. People don't often think, in real estate, it doesn't mean you really have to do anything wrong to get sued. It simply means you're going to get sued because somebody thinks they can take something from you. And I don't care if it's somebody walking down the street and they trip and fall in front of your property, or they're walking up the steps, the mailman, and they trip and fall on ice, because we get a lot of that. Or maybe this just happened. We just got sued. Literally, I remember I was speaking at an event and I took a little break. I looked at my phone and sure enough, we were getting sued. One of our tenants' dog bit the neighbor, and he found one of the ambulance chasers and he got sued. But the best part is, that sounds awful, right? I laugh. I hit a button now. I have the people to call, and the people that I know that I need to basically take care of this. You're going to have insurance. You're going to have your legal team and properly structured entities, and you're going to have an attorney that's going to handle it. At that point, you're just like, all right, deal with it. So let's talk about structure. Let's talk about what you guys do, how you can protect people. And then, if you don't mind, Brian, let's dive into these series LLCs, because that's really what big hotels use. And people never really seem to understand that the hotel never seems to own anything, and they get sued all the time. And you can have the broom and mop in the mop room, and that's about all we own, because the rest of that. But anyway, let's get into it.
Oh, absolutely. I think it, and also is time you own real estate, it's the easiest thing for people to want to go after because one, there's equity in it. It's actually worth something, and it's likely going to go up. And there's ways of even putting a lien on the house before even the judgment is out. So you could have a lot of headaches with a lawsuit, even if you're found innocent as well in the process. And anytime that you are being sued personally, they find out your name, it's very easy. It's all public record for the most part if you're buying it in your name. And so it's easy to find. It's all over the place. I mean, even use like Zillow or something like that. Everything is very public. With the series LLC, what happens, and Jennifer, you can jump in whatever, because I know you have a ton of knowledge on the intricacies of everything that comes along with this. But every time we do a series, basically you have a parent company that owns multiple child other LLCs. And so basically the only thing the parent company owns is all of these other LLCs. And so what happens is each of these child's LLCs, we put an anonymous land trust into each one, and then you put each property into each of these child LLCs.
Yeah, it's a structure you're going to need help with because it involves utilizing anonymous land trusts. And even in New York, there's other remedies. You have a Delaware statutory trust, which acts very similarly, but is much better for people who live in like Massachusetts, Delaware, California, or New York. So a series LLC is one entity, but you also pair it with your operating company. So what you're going to want to have is a regular LLC, and we can do one that's even anonymous. And that's your face to the world. That's you're hiring contractors, you're accepting rents, you're paying your property manager, you're doing everything under this one structure. But when the money or the assets come in, you call your team and you say, I need a transfer. I've just bought a new house that we're going to be rehabbing and keep it holding. And that deed then transfers over from you, and then it funds an anonymous land trust. That anonymous land trust is held with a series LLC. And what that means is there's this parent company. It's got all these little legs, and they are all separate entities. So underneath this one, parent, we call it a parent, is going to be a child trust and a child LLC, and then that property. Then there'll be another one. So they're completely separated from one another. You're going to have all these onions and layers that protect every single asset that you have. And that asset may be a shopping mall. It could be a private airport. If you have a Delaware statutory trust, it's a different structure, but similar properties. You can even put your personal residence in that. And then you would have a secondary residence in another one, and they're not together. So even if someone is trying to break open and has the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to pierce through all these different corporate veils, they will probably not find all the rest of the arms, one of which may be a classic car collection. Maybe one is a set of coins. So what we do is we provide arm's length clauses between you and your assets, everything that you own, so that if you get sued, if they can find it, most of the time it's a preventative from even getting sued because they only see your face to the world, and your face to the world really doesn't have anything. Sure, you have CEO on your card. Maybe you're not even an investor. You just have CEO, founder, co-owner. And they think, ooh, that's money. I smell the money. Then they go and look. There's nothing else. They can't find anything because it's held underneath trusts, which are private documents not filed with the state. Now, if you're shady and you're going to do some shady stuff, then you get the might of governments. Then they have the money, they have the resources, but it still takes time, effort, money, and a purpose. So most people, if they're just an angry tenant, or you hit them in their car, which that's really a lot of lawsuits too, is things that have nothing to do with your real estate or business. You get in a car wreck and you think your insurance will take care of it. No, if they can find a bunch of stuff, they'll just put liens. You'll end up with someone, and let's say it's all in your own name, and you're like, they hit me. get these liens off. And the guy's like, I'd rather go to court, their lawyer. Then your lawyer looks at you and says, look, it's going to cost you $8,000 just to go to court. You're right. And you win. But that guy doesn't have a penny to his name. So you can pay $8,000 or you can pay this guy $5,000 right now and he'll lift the liens. You're paying $5,000 for nothing. You're paying $5,000 because one guy was shady and did the paperwork. And that happens all the time. So what we do is we make it to where there's nothing to do. There's nothing to sue. And that guy limps in and says, yeah, I hit him, but they did something wrong. And I think I got a case and my neck hurts. And they pull you up. They find nothing. They go, dude, you don't have a case, because they know they can't collect. So that's what we do. We try to make it as unattractive as possible. And then if you are, we try to protect everything you've worked so hard for.
I love that. Now, how does the Series LLC play into, because I know I just sold a portfolio to a gentleman in California and he had a Series LLC. And one of the biggest issues he ran into here in New York was the financing component. The bank, the community bank, would not look at his Series LLC and give him financing using that. So he had to set up a separate entity just to do this deal here. So have you ever run into that? And I don't know much about it, so I'm not the expert on that side.
Right. Yeah, we would not, we have people that have LLCs, but using a Series LLC to get the financing, I would suggest use your regular operating LLC or your name. So that was some bad advice right from the offset. Also to California, that guy's getting killed on franchise taxes. That is not, it's $800 per franchise. So, and a Series LLC is not recognized. So he runs the risk of having every single child LLC getting hit with $800 a year. That's the old way. An LLC as an instrument was only created in Wyoming in 1976. The Series started in the 90s. Arkansas, they just allowed a Series in 2005. There's only 18 states, and including Puerto Rico, states and territories, that allow for a Series LLC. The beauty is, a lot of the states are like Texas. You don't have to live in Texas to have one. So you can have all the protection, not a state tax, and all the very attractive benefits that Texas offers business owners. Same with, that's why people like Nevada. We do that as well. But I would not recommend that structure for anyone in California, because you're going to get hit. I mean, they want their money, right? And so you're going to get hit with that. I would recommend something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I live in California too, and I understand that. I've been on both sides. So yeah, absolutely. And we have lawyers on staff that can help people too if they have questions like that, because every state's different. Everybody's situation is different too. And so that's usually why we wanted to focus so much on this avenue, because there's so many different things that you can do that can go right if you structure it right, and also can go wrong if you don't structure it right. And so that's why our focus is solely on this, because everybody's situation is different. We've heard multiple stories and multiple ways people have invested their properties, and so getting them in the right structure so they're ultimately protected the best is really what we want to help people do.
Yeah, and in California, there's a qualified personal residence trust, which it's still a valid instrument. It used to be amazing. You could save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on your estate tax if you put your personal residence in there, because California homestead exemption is a complete joke. I mean, it's like $75,000 if you're married. If you're lucky, you have some issue, you can go to $100,000. The maximum it will protect your equity in your house is $175,000. That's if you're over a certain age or have a disability and there's a family living there. In California, that doesn't get you half of a garage. So that means you can build up equity of $1 million or more in a very modest house that you've been paying off for 30 years. And somebody could trip and fall, and your homeowners might say, you know what? We're not going to cover it, and they can take it. So they built a qualified personal residence trust. The only problem is in 2017, there's a new Fair Tax Act that came out, and it increased the exemption from like 5 million to 11.4 million. So a lot of the tax benefits are not being used, but the asset protection is still there. So for some people, that might be good for them. Usually for real estate investors, if you have multiple property, then we would recommend a different structure. But if you have a first home and a second home, that's another viable option. So we do a lot of different things for investors. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Absolutely.
Anti-PETA, but you know what I mean.
And I love kitties.
I know, little sweet little kitty.
Well, let's talk a little bit about like the solo case, because there's a lot of talk, this is we talk about money all the time, and really a lot of people are thinking, well, what does entity have to do with money? It has everything, because if you are somebody who's seeking money for your real estate deal and you're going to the private sector, whether it's private investors, hard money lenders, or any of those, and you want to borrow in your personal name, game over. They can't do it. They probably can, but they shouldn't. So if you are going to be in the business and you are going to be looking for funds for your properties, whether it be rentals, flips, I don't care what you're doing, you almost have to have an entity. And then once you get the entity set up, then you basically can borrow money on the commercial basis, meaning in your entity's name. But also let's talk a little bit about like the solo case, because there's a lot of moving parts to a solo case. So I'll have you explain it and then also explain the structure of it.
Okay. You want me to take that, Brian?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So for a solo 401k, it's specifically geared for entrepreneurs who are self-employed and have no employees, though it does allow them to cover both themselves and a spouse. Mm-hmm. Once you have an employee, you need a self-directed IRA. Very similar, except for a solo 401k allows for much higher limits, and it's also much more attractive, and more people are going to utilize that. More of your listeners, I think this will apply to them, because they can work for someone else, have a W-2, so they can still have their JOB, right, and have their 401k there. But yet, if they create another solo entity where they don't have employees, let's say for their flipping house real estate business, it's just them and a spouse, this is something that they would open up. So it's the ability to that are not found in traditional IRAs, for them to use their retirement funds to make almost any type of investment on their own without the consent of any custodian or other person. So it allows them to act as the trustee, so it gives them checkbook control. That alone is invaluable.
I love that. Yeah.
Also, in 2020, you're able to contribute up to $57,000. With an additional $6,500 catch-up contribution if you're 50 or older. So in a 401k, you are greatly limited. This is like 10 times more than what you're able to do. So to break it down, you have two components to that. As an employee, you can contribute up to $19,500 or 100% of your compensation, whichever is less. If you're 50 or older, you get the additional $6,500. And then if you're an employer, you're able to make an additional profit sharing of up to $25,000 of your compensation. And the limit on compensation that can be used to factor in your contribution is $285,000. I'm kind of looking at my notes here too.
So essentially what allows you to do is be able to use your money pre-tax and actually invest in real estate or whatever you want to. And it just gives you so much more control than the normal 401k, which we'll go into, but you're horribly likely not going to make a whole lot of money.
You don't have much control.
You have zero control in things that you probably don't even know much about and where it's really going.
And you are under no obligation to contribute. Yeah. Traditional IRAs many times can hit you with penalties for no contributions. And a lot of people don't know this. They don't realize that there are penalties involved with most traditional IRA plans. And then they go, well, I thought I should have this. And then there's these big penalties that are just taken out, because they didn't make a contribution. You never have to worry about that with the solo 401k. And you can borrow up to $50,000 or 50%, whichever is less, to go and reinvest yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's on, a very different, much more favorable terms for you. And not only can you invest in real estate, which is huge, you can do public stocks, private business entities, commercial paper. There are prohibited transactions, but they're not, they're not as many. You would just have a lot more greater freedom to diversify your portfolio and to have your money work for you rather than just, I always say, rather than sitting on the couch, eating Cheetos, doing nothing, and you have an exemption from UDFI, which is massive. The solo 401k, getting it set up, well, ours does, it pays for itself, because when you pay for it with funds from your business, you're eligible to claim that deduction which also includes the annual maintenance fees. So that helps reduce your business's income tax liability. So it kind of pays for itself. And there's a built-in sub-Roth IRA that's built into it. So you can contribute without any income restrictions, except for, the pre-tax deferral, which a lot of people don't realize when they see that. They find that's a benefit. So there's just a lot to it.
Incredible machines to use, and what a great tool for somebody to have that doesn't have employees, or create a different entity and then start one, because honestly it's one of the most flexible vehicles out there that allows you the biggest benefit from a tax standpoint because of the amount you can put in. Now you talked about the checkbook writing. Now I know that a lot of people, if they set up a solo, okay, and you give them a checkbook, some bad things can happen. So let's just dive into that component, the loan option and the checkbook writing, and let's just kind of dissect that a little bit more. So just tell them about the checkbook and what they can use that for, and then the loan provisions.
Well, there are only certain things you can use the checkbook for, but some of the things that you can use it for are to pay off debt. Let's say you are able to contribute, and then you can look at the rate, the payback rate, and there are rate. It's not completely interest-free, and you do have to pay it back on time, and you have rules with that.
But you keep the interest. That's an important piece. The interest.
You keep the interest and it rolls up, but you still have to do your due diligence and make your payments and abide by the terms that are set up. But if you have, let's say, a personal guarantee loan, out there, and you needed, $10,000 for your kids braces, I don't know, and you got some ridiculous interest rate, 22% at the time, and you're still paying that off, you'd want to look at that. You'd want to be able to say, I need to pay that off now, get on the interest and pay off on that. So it can be used for things like that, or used for real estate, or used for other business entities. Let's say a franchise, you're not allowed to do that in a traditional. So you could do that, but you do have rules with everything, and you do have to pay it, but you keep that interest, and then it can just work for you. Everything works for you rather than not really.
Yeah. No, that's a great explanation. Is there minimums and restrictions on how much money they can take out on the loan provision with the check writing?
Yeah, 50,000 or 50%.
Right. Yeah. So I wanted to cover that because a lot of people that I speak to about solo Ks, they're misinformed in terms of that. They think they can just take the money, use it for whatever, and kind of you almost can. I mean, there's restrictions, but really there's not too many. But you have to pay that money back. So you have to treat your money the same way you treat the bank's money. Because I mean, hey, if you're in debt and you went to the bank to get a debt consolidation loan, and that debt consolidation loan is going to cost you 12%. You're obligated to pay that bank back every month, never missing a payment, and you're going to pay them back with interest. So if you used your solo K to pay off those debts, you basically should do the same darn thing and treat your money the same darn way you treat the bank's money. Pay yourself back with interest. And the nice thing with the solo K is all the interest that you're paying back to yourself is yours. It just goes back in your account. You get to keep that money. I mean, I can't think of a better way to use your money and to be the bank than that. Well, outside of the money multiplier method, obviously, but yes, this is the second best thing to sliced bread, if you will.
Yeah. And that's what we tell people, be your own bank, but we mean it. You have to be your own bank. So let's say you can afford that elevated 20% payment. Guess what? Why don't you make that same payment, put it back at a lower interest rate or whatever,
Exactly.
You're still doing it. So now you're being your own bank, but you're being a lot smarter. You're paying it off, whatever, to yourself a lot quicker. And it's just, it teaches you how to budget, but it's a mindset.
Yeah,
so you're going to start thinking about things a little bit differently because you're the one having to do it, but you're the one benefiting from it.
And I loved it. Yeah. I love that because I mean, you've already, spoken to me about this stuff, but that's exactly what we teach people to do with the money multiplier and with Money School is literally take back control of your money, because once you take back control, you actually you'll get financial freedom. And the second you don't learn to take back control, you're giving someone else control of your money, whether it be the bank, whether it be Wall Street or some finance company, they're in control of your money. So who do you want to be in control? You or them? That's it. This gives you that mechanism and that vehicle to then start taking back control and really doing that.
I just realized, I think I stole that saying, sit on your couch and eating Cheetos from you from listening to your show. I just just parroted back what I learned from you.
That's awesome. That's a huge compliment.
That is it. And now I use it. I've taken that into my own lexicon. I was like, oh my God, is he the one I stole that from? Probably so. So Lyron gave credit. I did not come up with that. I'm pretty sure Chris did. Just listen to him.
That's all right.
Wait a minute. This is sounding familiar. Oh crap. Yeah.
Yeah. Just always trying to get people to think of their money that's just sitting around as money sitting on your couch, eating your Lay's potato chips and your Fritos, drinking your soda while watching your TV, and you're out working.
Yes.
Your money's being lazy and you're out working. Switch that. Get your money to go to work. And the nice thing about money, and this is the greatest thing, because employees and people, they have limits. There's laws, there's rules. Your money, you can literally work that money as hard as you can. There's no limits. Make it work all day, 24/7. It will never complain. It will never yell at you. It will never take vacations. It'll never quit. But you have to tell it how to go to work. And the second you learn how to do that, your whole life will change. And that's exactly what you're talking about. You're giving them that way to use their money and to put their money to work, because that money is just sitting there doing nothing. You might think it's doing something, but it's not. It's just sitting there. So I love talking about this. You can see like I get all fired up.
I love it. You were so fired up. You fired me up, and I just started telling everybody the same thing. Yeah.
Oh, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
I think that's one of the biggest things that people need to shift is looking at money as something that works for you. Because we've always been told that we need to work for it. We're always slave to making money or this and that. And it just isn't the right way of really looking at how to really, expand exponentially. I mean, there's just no way. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts I think that people need to have, and whether they're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, is really how do you make money work for you? There's no better way of doing it. And that's how people get ahead. There's no way you can work your way out of into wealth. I mean, there's just no way. And so definitely it's the best thing to do.
I love that, Brian. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, and it's a mindset. That's all it is, because our entire lives, we're taught that money works a certain way. And what we're actually taught, I don't care whether it's high school, I don't care whether it's college, trade schools, we are taught to go get a job. We're taught how to be good stewards to a job, a job, where we trade hours for dollars, because that's really what they want us to be. But the second you start realizing that you don't really like that trading hours for dollars, you need to take control of that. And that's where you have to start learning how to have your money work for you, because you nailed it. That's what we're taught to do. We're taught to go out, get a job, work hard. We have never once in our lives been taught how to have our money work for us. And there's as far as I could be wrong with this, because I'm wrong a lot, but I've never once seen one curriculum in college, higher education, Harvard's, or any of them where they teach people how to make their money work for them. They don't. They teach them how to go work for money. It's almost backwards, right? But if everybody learned how to make their money work for them, what would happen to the almighty eye, if you will? What would happen to the big picture where all the money flows?
It would change the world. It would stop income inequality. It would allow people that are naturally better to stop getting hit by the system or the man and unable to springboard out of their situation. There are people from every single walk of life, and people wonder, well, how are you able to get out of that? Now we are seeing, especially young men from the ages of 15 to 40 worldwide, Yellow Vests or ISIS or Antifa or what neo-Nazis, whatever you say. And it's all the same complaint. I feel there's no opportunity for me in this world. I feel I do not have the opportunity to be able to make enough money to afford a decent home where I can breathe and to be able to support a family. Any politician, if you're listening right now, that if you can speak to that demographic, you and figure out a way to assure them that that's going to happen, then you have, you're going to have a leg up, because that is a worry for every person. But this mindset isn't it. This mindset is also not conducive to this secret only being held by a very teeny weeny percentage of people and everybody else taught to be cogs in a machine. Do we need those cogs? Yeah, but that doesn't mean the guy who's like, look, I am just so happy being on this factory, and I make this thing right now, and this is what I love to do. I love just getting my mindset into making sure that this one piece that's going to go into this car is perfect. There's millions of people who love that. They take pride in it, but they can also make their money work better themselves. And guess what?
Right.
You're not having to bail them out like a bank. It's going to be a lot different. So yeah.
And I like that because, and that's one thing. That's the thing. It's, unfortunately, like if we could just get everybody to understand, the things that we teach at Money Multiplier, at Money School, and the things that we've been talking about, it would be a different world. But the problem and the fact of the reality really is that will never happen. It just will never happen. The system won't allow it to happen. So really, I always say we talk to 5%, which goes right into it. I use the 5% because it plays into the statistics of the Social Security. According to those Social Security numbers, out of 100 people, only 5 of them are going to be financially secure at the age of retirement, which is sick. But that really means that there's only 5% of people out there that are seeking the knowledge and willing to change their mindset and change what they're doing to better themselves. The rest of them, like you said, there's nothing. You can't help people that don't want to be helped. You can walk them to the water, but they're never going to drink it, and they're going to die of dehydration. It's just, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's a sad fact of life.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't
5% is a lot of people. 5% is a lot of people. So if we can do that, we have done a great thing for society, for this world, and for everything else. And I love doing these podcasts because, hey, if I can help just one person with this podcast by bringing you on, teaching people how to do this stuff, that is just a monumental victory. So I thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge on all this. So with that being said, if people wanted to get a hold of you and they wanted help with the solo K, they want help with series LLCs, or they just need to set up their entity so that they can actually treat themselves like a legitimate business and be a real entrepreneur, how do they get a hold of you? What is the best way?
Well, they can go to our website, which is leafylegalservices.com. And we have a free ebook on our site. We also have a way to schedule a free call with us as well, and give us a call. We're happy to sit down and talk things through and see where you're at and see if we can give you the right advice for what your situation is. So we love talking to people and figuring out what the best way to protect your assets are.
That's great. And the other thing too that we haven't talked about is you guys have a great freaking podcast, and we haven't even said that. So tell them about your podcast.
Well, if you go to leafylegalservices.com, the podcast is right on there. It's called Leafy Podcast. It's amazing how many people come to listen because they think it's about pot and not about investment.
However you get them there.
But we're getting them, bait and switch, right? And,
they might be all about pot, but people that are into that, they might need an entity set up. And probably a series LLC would be a good idea.
Yes, you have a CBD business, you come and you talk to me. But we drop episodes twice a week, and we talk to real estate investors, entrepreneurs. We also talk to a lot of mindset people who can help you grow or change your mind. We love that. CPAs, you name it. It's all in this realm of knowledge and getting out this education, just like you do, Chris, so that people can just think differently and get some tools under their belt, because we're not taught this stuff. You're absolutely right. And so it's the education you were supposed to receive and didn't. So, yeah.
I love it. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and dropping these golden nuggets. And I'm sure my audience is absolutely going to really, really learn a lot from this and seek you guys out for some help. So, for every one of you listening, just like I said earlier, it's time to take action. It's time to begin your journey to becoming a rebel banker. You just heard some amazing things here, things that no one's going to teach you, because this is the knowledge you have to seek out. If you think for a second your financial advisor, like I used to be, is going to come to you and start teaching you all about solo Ks, you need to look in the mirror and really reflect on what you're looking at, because it's not going to happen. Stop believing what everybody else is telling you and start following the people that are doing the things you want to do. And those people are who you should seek out. And this right here are the ones that will help you set it up. So thank everybody, or everybody give a big thanks to Brian and Jennifer for being on the show, because this is a great topic. And for all of you, have a great day. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thank you.
All right. Hi. Thank you.